Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and today we will be talking to an IFBB pro who has so much knowledge in the realms of philosophy, health, and self-improvement. She's a transformation consultant who loves positive energy and has a deep passion for elder care and fitness. This is a woman who faced and faces adversity every day and always shares beautiful insights from the heart. I'm so excited to have Kate Abate joining us today. How are you doing, Kate?
I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's going to be awesome. And I always start the show by asking the one question that I think a lot of people wonder is, what's something that you think about right before you step on stage?
Wow. I think about this is it. This is that moment. This is that moment, that we've been training and working hard for. And no matter what has happened up until this point, this is the point with respect to bodybuilding and bikini that matters. And it's these 10 seconds, these 30 seconds that you have to do your best and give it your all. And, to try to be excited about that. Anxiety can have two different faces. It can be excitement or it can be dread. It can be many other things as well. But to lean into the excitement and to stay focused and to look directly at the judges and to really own yourself and own that moment that you have.
That's so
because
awesome.
This moment is, now is all we have, right? And now is always all that we have. Like this moment right now with you and I is all that we have.
Yeah.
And we're lucky for every other moment that we might have, but there might not be another. And that moment on stage is exactly like this moment. And to do exactly and everything that we can and to put our best foot forward is, it's a version of Dharma. Certainly.
Absolutely. That's so powerful. It's true. Like every single moment that we have in our life is basically what we've been preparing for with every moment leading up to it as well. Like I always think it's easy for us
Absolutely.
to, it's easy to future tense, right? I'll be happy when, or,
Mm-hmm.
oh, life is gonna, when I have this in my life, I'll be successful, or whatever. It's very easy. A lot of us future pace. But in reality, this moment is what we were waiting for yesterday, and we don't know if it's going to be here tomorrow. So I really love that that's something that crosses your mind, and it's something that you value at such a high level. I think that is a big reason why you've come so far in your competing. And a lot
Thank
of
you.
people, of course, absolutely. And I didn't know this. I didn't know some things about you that I quickly learned upon following you on Instagram. And that was that you're facing a lot of health problems. And I know that you've had some health setbacks recently with some of the flare ups in those autoimmune disorders of celiac and lupus. And I know lupus can be especially complicated and harmful. So, in your own words and from your experience, how would you describe lupus to someone who has never even heard of it?
Well, I would even back up and say I think autoimmune diseases as one group are kind of like this big gray blob that neither doctors nor you know, researchers have really been able to put a finger on and label and say, this is this, this is that. There's a lot of gray area when it comes to autoimmune. And the real, as it turns out, what might be a truth is that we really don't know what is causing what and why certain things happen to certain people and why they don't happen to other people. And we're doing this, wild goose chase trying to figure out where these symptoms are coming from. And so it almost makes more sense to call a lot of autoimmune diseases just autoimmune disease. And symptoms are symptoms. And because as my doctor says, she says, well, you have some arthritis, and you have celiacs, and you have lupus, and you have kind of like a pinch of all of these different things, right? Which when we live in a black and white world, we want to be told, oh, it's this, and therefore this is the treatment, or it's this, and therefore you should do this and avoid this. And when it comes to autoimmune, these things parade and masquerade as so many different things before you really get to the bottom of something, that it makes sense to treat autoimmunity with a very holistic approach. But lupus, as with other autoimmune diseases, it tends to it can present, again, in so many different ways. It can present, obviously it presents in your organs, but it can present in the skin, it can present in the joints, it can present in the kidneys or the liver. It can present in the mind. And same with celiacs. Celiacs is an autoimmune, and so it affects every single organ, every single system that we have will flare up, and that could be related to a celiac generated response, or it could be exogenous. It could be, you got stung by a bee, and that's why that's, swelling up, and it has nothing to do with autoimmunity. So, lupus, for me, has been characterized by some very strange chest pains and chest swelling and inflammation that I've been dealing with for a few months now. And it honestly felt like, for a few months, it felt like I was having a heart attack.
Wow.
And it was very bizarre. You tell and really there's a side of shame. I think the hardest thing for me is the shame that comes along with it, right? Because when you're in the fitness industry and you're trying to market yourself to attract business, perhaps. But even if you just dedicate yourself to fitness, to improving your own fitness, when you're experiencing a health issue, you feel, who am I to be in fitness and be in health when here I am struggling with these issues? Doctor, heal thyself. How about I fix myself first, and then, go forward into the world, and that's why I'm not so big on preaching information to others, because I think it's easy to stand on the soapbox and to preach, and to not ask oneself, well, how am I still doing this in my life? How is this problem still present, and how can I outgrow this problem, and how can I be the solution? And so when it comes to experiencing autoimmune issues, it's frustrating, because you think you're doing everything you can to be as healthy as possible, and then things kind of backfire. But I choose not to look at it that way, because that's, not really, no one wins with that outlook, right? So it's all just lessons. I try not to label myself as saying, I have this, I have this, I have this, because then you start to make excuses, and then, once you label yourself, Kierkegaard says this, when you label me, you negate me. And when you label yourself as something, you then become finite to whatever that thing is. And, what you perceive will persist. And if I perceive myself to be limited by having all of these issues, then those issues are going to keep showing up in my reality, because I'm perceiving that I have those limitations. Therefore, I will behave and act as if I do have those limitations subconsciously. And
Yes.
I think that's very tough medicine to take when you're in the midst of an issue, like a health issue, because it's really harsh. That's a hard pill to swallow. But if you can preventatively go about your way of living and not have every thought begin with, oh, well, that pain is because of this, and oh, that pain must be that, and instead just continue to invite, the best well-being that you can have, and to continue to be grateful for everything in every moment, then I think it's just a lot easier to deal with, and it's a lot more fun way to live too.
Yeah, it totally is. I mean, that's something I admire so much about you is your consistent positive energy. And
Thank you.
yes, of course. I mean, you really deserve a lot of credit for that. I mean, you have really high vibes no matter what situation you're in. I've noticed you, um, it appears to me, anyways, that you very much so value the energy and the frequency of which you're vibrating at, because you recognize and you fully trust and believe that that's going to emit whatever you're going to attract back in. And I believe this has become really apparent in your journey, I think, to others as well. And I find that that's something that not only inspires people, but opens up their minds to think a little bit deeper, because much of what we see in the fitness industry is very surface level. So to take
Sure.
it beyond the surface level, it's like, okay, what's really going on? What do we really need to do? I mean, there are people who don't focus at all, don't even open their minds to think about this. And it's
Right.
unfortunate, because it's a whole new level of which I believe anyways, that has just been layered and layered on top of over time, whether that's through subconscious conditioning, belief systems, society, the way that we're raised, or just most of it, I believe, really is subconscious. But I would like to know from your perspective, and what would you recommend, or how would you say you go about it, to someone who is struggling to actually start feeling more accepting and loving towards what is, right? What is, as in what we were talking about, the present moment, like accepting what
Right.
is, whether you're in a struggle or you're in an absolute breakthrough or you're just even, and actually seeing more opportunities rather than seeing setbacks.
I think the easiest, I mean, I always go to gratitude because, and I'm sure it sounds like a cliche, and it's, it's easy to become jaded to an attitude of gratitude, but I think it's something that, so really you're asking, about the state of being,
Mm-hmm.
and how does one get to a place where they are aware of being. And that's, a lifelong quest, I think, for most of us. But I think the key is, and I certainly am no teacher, I'm just a student of any, type of philosophy. But I do think the key is to remember that it's not a destination to be achieved, just like fitness and any just like most goals. It's not something we check off the box. It's something that perhaps you find a moment of gratitude today. There's a chance you will wake up tomorrow and you'll get in the car, and when you're backing out, someone will honk at you and you'll get mad that that person honked at you, and you'll lose your grip on that beautiful moment of gratitude you had just prior. And we have to then climb back above the clouds and find that gratitude all over again. And that's something, it's a daily thing, right? And I think it's the state of being is a habitual practice. It's a daily thing. And when it comes to meditation is a beautiful, it's a state. Often we use it as a tool to achieve a sense of that state, right? But it's really a state of mind that one can be in and be and just be, right? We're
Yeah.
not thinking, we're not processing, we're not scheduling, we're not strategizing, and you're just going with the flow. You're letting things flow in and flow out of the mind without attaching to them. And that takes so much self-work. But I do think that finding moments of gratitude every day, I mean, a simple hack is there's always someone who has it worse, always.
Mm.
And there's always a harder situation out there. And being what others have called me, a sick person, I think it's especially important. And I think it's a little easier too for me, because there's always something that I could be grateful for. Every moment that I'm not having some issue, I'm grateful for. And every moment that I am having an issue, I'm grateful for too, because
Yeah.
it forces me to take a time out. And that's a big, my husband likes to argue that, or not argue, but he likes to think that I get a lot of thinking done during those times of duress, right? When
Yeah.
the body is physically ill, the mind is free to wander, and you become detached from the body because you must. And that's when some of the most creative and deepest and most profound thoughts will come into one's mind, and you can cultivate a state of being that's separate from that which is physically manifested. And
Yes.
I think that gratitude for me is that portal, right? That helps me to get there. And whether it's a rose, which I like to post a lot, I like to post a lot about flowers, or whether it's a moment with your pet or your child or your grandmother. These are moments that are fleeting. And again, it's all you have in that moment right now. And just to be aware of that is hard enough. Like, I will definitely, that's hard for all of us. It's not like something I've mastered. And I wish I could say I'm always aware of every moment that I'm in, but we have to recall that, right? We have to
Mm.
remind our brains of that. Our intuition knows that, but we've
Yeah.
become so disconnected from our intuition with technology and with jam-packed schedules and stress and traffic and obligations and financials, that we have to learn to untangle from the brain and reconnect with the mind and the body and the spirit. So
Yes, this is so important, and I hope that to everybody listening, this is giving you that deep, almost nudge, right? Like your soul should be feeling a nudge, or you should be feeling a nudge from your soul to really connect with the moment that you're in right now, to every single word that you hear, to the sounds around you. And like Kate said, this isn't something that pretty much anybody masters. Let's be honest. A
right.
lot of this is, it's anything that someone says they've mastered. It really, I believe, just means that they're making a conscious choice every day to prioritize it. And we have to be conscious about our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, and something that I know is from like Epictetus. I always say that wrong, I feel like, but
Epictetus.
yes,
But
Epictetus.
who knows? It could be Epictetus. I wasn't there.
So he once made a great, his quote was something along the lines of, essentially, when a person loses their, I'll read it, I have it. When a person loses their composure, it isn't their skills and virtues that are troubled, but the spirit in which they exist. And when that spirit calms down, so do those things. So this, I think, ties in really well with what you said, not only about like someone hugging, throwing you off course, but the fact is, we have that choice every single day to see maybe some moment we messed up in, or we perceive as a moment of messing up. We can see something as a moment of great success. We can see something, anything that takes us almost out of our equilibrium, or basically like our main center of balance. And we can see this as something that throws us off or off, or is a definition of us, as though success or failure defines us. And the truth is that we are the only ones. Our soul is always within us, and it has the power to determine our reality, and it's guiding us. However, we've become very disconnected. Does that mean that you should feel bad about that? No. Does it mean you should feel awesome about it? No. It just means that that's what is. So, what we can do is disconnect or detach from that as a belief or a representation of us, and remember who we are deep down inside. We don't have to be defined by these things. When we get off course, it's not because we're bad, it's not because we're great, it's just because something took us off course, and we have the power to readjust and get back on, without judgment. So it's about reconnecting with your soul so you can really regain that composure. And when we reconnect with our soul, I think that that opens up opportunities for connection in other areas of our life. And as someone who Kate is someone who helps others transform and design the best versions of themselves. Kate, a few years ago, you were actually leading a life that wasn't serving you, with a lot of toxicity that was wreaking havoc on your mind and your health. So, what was the aha moment that led you to shift your lifestyle and ultimately lead you to helping others do the same, and really diving deep into becoming this student and this student of philosophy and life?
That's a great question. I think it's a series of aha moments. I think it's amazing when someone has one large aha moment, but I do think it's kind of like climbing a mountain where, you know, you reach a peak and then you realize it's not the peak, and you know, continue up the mountain, and then there's another one and another one. And I think as much as it's a process of learning and adding new things, it's also a process of learning and unlearning and removing things. And
Mhm.
sometimes those things are, you know, and we can talk about them as being toxicities, right? It's not that people are bad, but sometimes people are channeling toxic energies that aren't helpful. And sometimes it's not toxic, it's just that it's not for us. It's not getting us to be our best selves. And
Exactly.
I think we know when that's happening. I think there's an intuitive pull. And you know, I have worked in many different uh, jobs, and my health will break down in certain situations, and that's to me a sign that I used to ignore for a long time. And I believe that many people do ignore their health for a long time, and they assume that they can fix it later. And I'm grateful that my body pulled out all the stops and made
Mhm.
me change direction a little faster. And, you know, that to me is a sign, you know, there's more, Nietzsche says there's more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy. And
Mm.
I think that when we ignore what our body is trying to tell us, then we're very ripe to be learning a lesson very soon that will probably come with some bitterness, right? Um, because often experience is the most, you know, who Confucius says this, that experience is the most bitter way to learn. And um, I think it's bittersweet, personally.
Yes,
Um,
I agree with you.
but um, you know, sometimes it's removing things. And right now we're in a fast-paced world, and everyone wants to be marketable, and you want more and more and more, and it's more things and more appointments and more clients, and it's also, with that comes more stress and more obligations, and more financial pressure and more subconscious pressure to keep up with the Joneses, and um, also more ways to identify oneself as being something, right?
Mhm.
And when we can identify ourselves as being something, then if that something should evade us and go away, or if we should outgrow that something, or be fired from that something, then how does one define oneself? And then one finds oneself in, a conundrum of sorts, and it's a deep internal conflict, right? There's some cognitive dissonance going on. Well, I'm an engineer. Well, you were
Mhm.
fired from your job as being an engineer, so now most people would jump to say, well, now I'm worth less. I'm not worthless, but I'm worth less than I was before I was fired.
Right.
And that's not true at all.
Mm-mm.
It's just a social meme that we've been told, that we've been bought into, right? A meme is a virus of the mind. That's where that word comes from. And it's something that we've been taught to believe, that we are the value of the things that we accumulate, and the things that the letters we can put behind our names. And at the end of the day, we're born into this world as beautiful energy, and we leave this world as beautiful energy, and none of those things come with us. None of our
Yeah.
accomplishments or achievements or letters or none of it. And I think if one is able to keep that in mind, it's a lot easier. And I'm not saying I can't, because I certainly struggle with that, but
Mhm.
the more that I can be in touch with that knowing that we are not what we do, we are not what we have, we are not what we own, or we are not the definition of our goals,
Yeah.
um, that does make it easier to help one find oneself, um, when things change.
Absolutely. And that really is insightful, especially in the reminder that we really are not those things. I think that we are, like you said, we're in a fast-paced society. A lot of us are under the impression that this is the way to live now. But there are places in the world that don't live like us here
Correct.
in America. They really don't. There's some places that are still villages. I mean, I went to Fiji a few years ago. We went to a village. No one lives like this. There's what they
Right.
call Fiji time. They call it Fiji time because we're on America. It's so fast. Everything's fast paced.
Correct.
They don't define themselves by these things. They live off of the principles of which are basically, at least the way I see it, is almost instilled in us just from becoming humans. And I look at it like we're these souls having a human experience. And in order to get the most out of this human experience, from what I've kind of come to realize, and this could change and shift as I gain more experience, is that we need to use our gifts and our passions and our purpose not to define us, but to help shift and shape the world of which other humans are living in, so we can up level and continuously create this one consciousness almost, and coming to that conclusion that we all rely on each other, but we're not defined by the things that we necessarily create or, like you said, have. So yes, there are beautiful things that have been created: technology, computers, what we're using this medium to actually connect with each other from miles away. It's an awesome thing, but because I'm hosting this podcast doesn't make me any better or any worse. It's just something that's part of my experience. Being a competitor doesn't make you any better, any worse, just part of your
Right.
experience. And sometimes people will unfortunately rely on it because it's a great protection mechanism. The same thing happens with things like feeling shame or guilt or confusion. These negative emotions normally come up as a protection mechanism because our brain is like, well, if we name it, right, going back to the labels, if we label it, we're safer. We don't have to shift, we don't have to change. We're safe, we're content, there won't be another challenge. But when we step out of that, reconnect to ourselves, reconnect to our soul, reconnect to our purpose. And when I say purpose, that can be a scary word for people, but all I mean is like really just the purpose of you just showing up as the soul that you are, like recognizing how powerful that is and being okay and
Right.
knowing that
Just
that's,
that.
yes, that's all there is. Right. um and you said, this is something you're still working on, but I have got to say, like, your post, and to anyone who doesn't follow Kate on Instagram, like, do yourself a favor. Like, she has made some really beautiful and insightful posts, and if you feel
Thank you,
connected to them,
Celeste.
oh, you're so welcome. Seriously, when I read them, I was like, this girl, I'm gonna have so much fun talking to her, because you are really like very insightful. So if you guys are looking for someone who really takes it beyond the surface, check out her posts and let her know what you think of it. Like, let it entice your mind almost, and then if you feel called, I'd say, like, definitely follow her. But I'm getting off track. I just had to throw that in because, as you can see, this conversation is very much deeper than probably a lot of the other conversations you're going to hear on this podcast. And um, I'd love to know, like, this is purely out of curiosity. Have your own beliefs come from any specific historical philosophers?
Oh, I have so many love affairs with the ancients. It's funny. Yes, of course. I believe, my husband asked me to name my top influences, and I would say, you know, everyone and everything that has ever happened before me is an influence on me, of course. But
Mm,
to pick a few favorites, Nietzsche for sure. Um, I mean, just I mean, Carl Jung, Karl Marx. Um, I mean, even Kierkegaard is fantastic. I mean, and any of the greats. I mean, all of them. I mean, Plato. I mean, I've read them all. I celebrate. I think everyone has contributed a verse, right?
yes.
Um, and whether it's philosophy or literature, like Virginia Woolf or Kurt Vonnegut or um, the thing with it's all we call it wisdom of the ages, right?
Hmm.
Because it's like the Tao. Um, uh, Lao Tzu, of course, but um, Lao Tzu just means old man, and we don't know who he was or that he was at all. We don't know that he was a he. He could have been a
Mm.
she. And um, then there's the Bhagavad Gita, and between the Gita and the Tao, I mean, they're virtually the same text, and they have the same messages, and that's why it's wisdom of the ages, right? Because it's not, well, this one person said this and this other person said, of course there's conflicting things, but philosophers tend to respond to one another, and they build on the arguments of those that have come before them. They're standing on the shoulders of giants, as it said. And I think that's something for which to be grateful, is that we have access to so many just amazing philosophical texts, and it's up to us to continue to interpret them, just as those before us have. um,
Mm.
and yeah, I mean, there's definitely lots of influences, but um, those are all very old ones.
That's so cool. No, that's definitely something I was curious about. I'm gonna have to play this back myself so I can investigate some of those things. But I really liked what you said, that we don't know necessarily who it was, right?
Right.
So that's cool. It almost goes back to exactly what was said before of, like, this is what is, and that's all that there is. And some people might be listening going, well, that's really easy. And some people I know will have that mindset of, well, that's a good cop out, right? To just like
Right. Right.
release reality. But the thing is, like, I love that there are so many different beliefs in this world, and being open to those opinions and beliefs is what's allowed us to challenge our minds and to have some of the most epic philosophy and the most awesome discussions and these beliefs of which many people actually live their life by, whether or not they see it or they don't see it. Even if they don't know, like people could be living lives driven by beliefs of philosophers from the beginning of time and have no idea, because we
Right.
all, and it's really, I loved what you said, by the way. You mentioned it's everything leading up to every person, everything that was before you, right? And you
Yep.
said like people branch off of one another, like philosopher to philosopher. And this happens even today. There are people coming out with thoughts, ideas, challenges. I say challenges, and I use that word as in like almost like something different, right? It's something that challenges people, that makes people think. It's very critical. And
Right. It's
we
a provocation.
Yes, and those things have been reflected in previous and prior top philosophers, or um, even just past lives of various people that we weren't around with, but there's those ideas are still immersing in today's world. Even though the world is so different, the beliefs can still be applied, and it's very universal. And I know there's a lot of different beliefs also, and I'm going to kind of segue into something else that I know you're passionate about, but I want to kind of connect it, just to make it flow. But I will say, like, there's a lot of beliefs in the bodybuilding world about how to eat, what makes you successful, how to compete, right? The things you have to do to be the best. Like I've heard a lot of things, and I'm only an amateur, so I can imagine as a pro that's even, you've heard even more, you've gone through a lot. So being someone who is, and this is what I'm really curious about, in regards to competing, being someone who is passionate about gut and intestinal health. For those of you who don't know, Kate knows her stuff in this. I'd love to know your take on the diets of which most bikini competitors and bodybuilders in general tend to follow, and what you think are some key nutrition components that a competitor could actually become more conscious of while prepping.
Let's see where to start. um, well, your immune system, um, and a good, I think at least 10% of your nervous system, and your brain cells are in your gut. So treating our intestines properly is of utmost importance for long-term immune health, as well as mood, um, and nervous system health. So your CNS. So the things that we eat, are, you are what you eat, and that really is true. And the cute joke of, well, if you're eating the food pyramid, then you're going to look like a pyramid. I mean, this is a cute joke, but there is truth in that, right? So
Mhm.
um, I think so one thing that's very important for I think everyone is glutamine powder, because glutamine powder creates new enterocytes. So of course it's great for your joints and it's great for your muscles, and it helps you to recover faster. It's the number one depleted amino acid, and we need to replenish it. But even if you're not working out, it creates new enterocytes. So um, it lines the gut, and it creates the new cells that are going to line the gut. Now, the amazing thing about the human body that I have to remind myself of, and that we all have to remind ourselves, is that every system in the human body wants to repair and will repair in as little as in as long as 8 years. So you, in your body right now, you are for every single cell is different in your body than it was 8 years ago. every single bone, every single tooth, every single fiber, every single, your intestines, your livers, your everything has totally changed and has totally been replaced in the last 8 years. The bones take the longest, but the intestine takes 24 hours. So it's something to keep in mind that, first of all, like, your body will heal itself if you are ill. And this is something I remind myself of constantly. And it does really help to remember this, that if we just leave it alone and treat it properly and don't abuse it, it will return to its original state of health.
Yeah.
And if we're taking a lot of medications, we're likely to continue to see the same issue, because then the body's not able to heal itself, right? Because there's something that you're trying to override that with. So when it comes to food, it's really important to choose foods that work with one's body specifically. And so when I have clients, I don't like to create meal programs. I like to work with someone through it to find out exactly what their body tolerates and what their body does not tolerate. Whatever testing they have and have done is great, and it's, the more information is the better. But I don't believe that any one type of diet will fit every single person. It just doesn't work that way.
Yes.
So I think that, whether it's high protein or high fat or high carb, everything's worth trying, and everybody is going to be different. And so that's why I stick with take glutamine, first of all, because it will at least line the intestine. And when it lines the intestine, it means that your mood will be improved, your brain will be improved, your cognition, your synapses, your CNS, everything will be improved from the get-go. And that's true of everyone. So that I can say across the board. Everything else is like, well, drink water, and from there we'll build, because everybody's so different.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up and sharing that. I think it's really easy for people to just go on Pinterest, go on Instagram, go on Facebook, go on internet and type in meal plan for fat loss. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. First of all, how do you know that's what you need first, right? Like,
Right.
if you have visceral fat, it might not be because of your current diet or exercise routine. It might be because of stress, hormone imbalances. It could be because of foods that you just have intolerances to. There's a lot of variables, and not something that a person who's not as passionate about health and fitness and nutrition would necessarily explore on their own time. So, again, that's just what is. Not bad, not good, just what is. We all serve a purpose here.
Let's be clear. To say that it's all inflammation and water, for the most part, it's not.
No, exactly. I'm saying, like, if someone's holding on to a lot of fat and they feel like their variables are correct, it is important to consider, okay, well, are there any foods that maybe my body isn't necessarily passing through?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yes, but I agree with you. A lot of times,
Right.
especially as bikini competitors, girls will be like, wow, I'm holding on to so much water. It's like, girl, you are 6 weeks post-show. You've been eating like crap, and you're not treating your body with the love and respect that it deserves. And therefore, it's in overdrive working for you, and it came out of a deficit. It's going to hold on to these things. And
Right. And that's
yes.
okay. It will let them go when it's ready and when you're ready. Because, I recently spoke with a psychic, and she reminded me that the state of your gut, when you're constipated, it's you are emotionally and spiritually not letting go. You're holding on.
Mhm.
And likewise, when you have the runs, you are struggling to hold on. You are not fully grasping, what's happening spiritually, energetically, emotionally. And again, as Nietzsche likes to put so eloquently, there's more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy. And you can try to outthink anything, but your body, your bowels are the furthest thing from your brain, and they run the show. And that's why,
Yep.
I'm grateful to have colitis. I'm grateful to have IBS. And I'm missing part of my intestine. And you know, these things really, I'm grateful for these issues because they really help me to um, let go. I can't be a control freak about certain things, you know, and
Yeah.
it's really, it's a very important to continue to remember that, you know, the body will correct the mind, like, you know, and Lao Tzu says, you know, correct your mind and the rest will follow. Correct your
Yes.
mind and the rest will follow. And that, again, it's such simple advice, but it's very hard to follow.
Yes, and especially if your mind is cluttered with other conditioning and beliefs that are not serving it or conducive to that structure. And the body, like you said, it is built to restore and create homeostasis at all times. I was actually having a conversation with someone when I went to New York, and we were talking about how the world and the nature of it, there, I guess I should just say the universe and nature in general wants you to succeed. And the same is true of your body. It's created by a lot of these same things and these same principles. So it wants you to succeed. And when we neglect to listen to our body and trust the signs that it's giving us, we're neglecting our body of really the tools that it needs to optimize our life here on earth as humans. And when we get the sign, let's say, it's basically a physical manifestation of an emotional or internal problem. More often than not, it's why there's so many energy healings. It's why Eastern and Western medicine is very different. It's why some things work for some people and some don't. If you're not even open to the thought of using something like energy healing to cure a physical ailment, then of course that's energy healing is likely not going to have the same effect on you as someone who is open to it, someone who is
Right.
connected to their intuition, who is connected to their body. So I'd love to know, how would you, or how do you like to reconnect with your body and your intuition?
I have a daily ritual um, where I live near. I like to walk to the park, and the park overlooks the ocean. And there's a beautiful rose garden and beautiful trees. And I usually listen to a book on tape, a very, you know, a sacred, you know, book or something. And I just walk and I take it all in, and it helps me to um, you know, I love living near the ocean. I used to love living near the mountains because they're humbling. You know, you just
Mhm.
feel, you know, so like you're really part of something, and it's part of you. And it's easier to tap into unity consciousness when um, you're surrounded by such major elements and such, you know, beautifully non-man-made, um, you know, forces of this universe. And that just is really, it's a centering exercise for me.
That's so cool. I love that. And I think a lot of people might be listening and wondering, oh, well, that's great, Kate. And I say this as though I'm from their listening perspective, but it's like, well, that's great, Kate, but how did you end up doing, when did you decide to find the time for that? How do you do that? Because I'm working and I'm this, and they go back to the thought processes of there's too much to do, go, 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 right? They're not on Fiji time. So like,
Right.
what would you say to someone if they heard you, like, you know, I feel like you're one of those people who probably will bring this stuff up in conversation and sometimes eyes will glaze over, um because they're not sure, or they feel like it's impossible for them. So if someone was like, Kate, I'm so glad that works for you, it's impossible for me, how would you overcome that limiting belief?
Well, I don't love that word impossible. And I also think it's important to know your audience. And I can pretty much tell. I mean, you know, Jesus said, "Don't cast pearls before swine," and who's to say who's swine and who's not? And no one's swine all the time. It's just in certain conversations are for some people, and others, not yet. And other, everyone's at a different place. So I think with a little social awareness, it's easy to kind of avoid that. I am listening to a book right now called Excuses Be Gone by Wayne Dyer, and he really gets to the bottom of all and all of the reasons why not to make those excuses. But absolutely right. And I would say finding a piece, a place in one's space, in one's mind, is not a physical place. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to live near, I mean, who has the luxury to live near the beach? Very few people, right? But listen, if it works for you to look at an image of the beach, then fantastic. If it works for you to put your forehead down on your yoga mat and close your eyes and tune everything out for 5 minutes every morning, fantastic. You could easily find that by walking your dog and seeing your dog, enjoying the simple things and smelling the tree. And you're frustrated because you got to get back to the house, but your dog is on Fiji time, and your dog is saying, nope, I am enjoying this tree. And to be frustrated by it is a sign. It's interesting. It's okay, that's interesting that I'm frustrated by the simple joy and pleasure that my dog is finding in this simple moment. And maybe I can learn from my dog a little bit, And
very true.
I think we all have rituals, like maybe it's in the shower, oh my gosh, I have running water and it's warm. This is amazing. There were, most of history before us did not have that luxury ever.
Yes.
And there are ways to find luxury in driving a car. You own a vehicle that has 4 wheels and takes you places that you're not pedaling or running or using horses to, this is an amazing invention. This is something for which to be grateful. And you don't have to listen or smell other people when you're in your own car. There are a million opportunities for it. It's just, can you cultivate the lens to see them? I just happen to like walking to the park and doing it there, but there are parks in other places. It doesn't have to be on the ocean. And for some people, this moment is going to a religious service. It's, going to church and or going to synagogue or Chabad, whatever it is. And for others, it's the gym.
Yeah.
You go to the gym and you find that space, that moment that's yours, and that's your grounding, your settling. And maybe it's cardio, maybe it's weight training, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's jazzercise. It doesn't matter what it is.
Right. There's no right or wrong.
Right. There's no right or wrong. And it doesn't have to be, the park. It can be anywhere.
Yes, absolutely. It's really about getting present again, like present with yourself, present with your body, present with gratitude. I think that's literally been a theme throughout this whole episode is when we connect to the present moment within ourselves, within our bodies, within our minds, within the things that we see, the people we run into, the way our dog acts, like these are all mirrors. They're all reflections of lessons and opportunities for us to grow and shift. And I think that we need to take more pressure off of ourselves and start just really embracing the present moment for all that it is. And now I feel like I could talk to you about this forever, and I want to obviously respect your time, and I would love to just kind of close with, what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone? And I know you're not much of an information giver, but I think you can understand what I'm asking by this question. But what's a piece of advice you'd give to someone considering competing, or actually someone who's currently competing and wanting to go pro?
I would say, first of all, figure out why you want to compete, and really get underneath that question. It seems like an obvious question, but um, really, is it to reach a certain goal? Is it to reach a certain body fat? Is it to a certain state of happiness that you think you'll obtain by looking a certain way? Or is it going to do it? Or whatever. It doesn't matter to me what the answer is. It's figure out why you want to compete, because it's a lot, and it's hard. And same with going pro. And then what? Do you just want to go pro? Not just, but is that your goal to have a pro card? And then ask yourself, why do you want to have a pro card? And how will life be different then? And I would say play it out a little bit, and really examine and get underneath it. There's no right or wrong answer, but knowing why you're doing something will help. You'll have more longevity out of it if you really examine the reasons underneath what's motivating you. Because some of the posts I don't understand so much are, oh, I'm not motivated to go to the gym today, and I'm not, and I'm like, well, no one said you had to. Like,
Yeah.
no one said you had to compete. No one said you had to do any of this stuff. All you have to do is take up space, and you have to die. Those are the only two things you have to do. Everything else is optional. And I'm a little bit all out of sympathy when it comes to complaining about choices that we've made. And I think accountability is really important. Whether it's, getting a dog and then complaining about having to walk the dog, or whether it's competing and then complaining about having to diet and do cardio. These are choices that we have made and we have put ourselves through. And if you're going to find it miserable, then maybe it's not for you. And this is why I don't, and competing is not for everyone. It's really not. And I don't recommend it to anyone. Meaning I don't ever go out of my way and say, you need to go compete right now. Because that's a very personal choice, and it takes a lot of I don't know what it takes a lot of, but it takes a lot of something to get someone to want to do that, to get to get oneself to be interested in doing that. And I think it's a personal choice. I think it's a fantastic thing to do, when you can be detached from the outcome, and when you can make it a lifelong lifestyle choice, or maybe you don't want it to be a lifelong lifestyle choice. You just want to do it for a few years because you're interested in it. You want to learn the habits, and then you want to ease out of it. That's totally, again, there's no right or wrong answer. But like everything else, it doesn't lead one to being a happier person, because one competes, because one is capable of achieving a certain level of body fat. Ultimately we'll be very detached from our bodies, at some point in our futures. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe today, maybe tomorrow, but maybe 50 years from now. And you may not be at that same body fat in 50 years. And are you still going to, are you basing your happiness on your level of body fat? Then that's kind of, you're setting yourself up for some disappointment in the future. And that's a choice you're making now. So to question that and to be okay with whatever outcome it is, then hell yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. Like, really almost living in that moment as though you already have what you want, which is good for manifesting anything, but more so from the perspective of, how does this really make me feel? What's the deeper reason? What's the deeper connection? What am I really after? That's very powerful stuff. And to anybody listening, I really encourage you to do this with any area of your life. Ask the deeper questions as to why. And then when you get to that why, ask yourself again. And
Right. And it can change. And
yes,
it probably should.
be okay with it when it does too, or if it does. Like, we are not set in stone. Nothing is. Again, going back to that present moment, this is what we have, this is what is. Accepting it, and as Kate said, being very grateful for it is the thing that really has helped her so much in her life. I can attest to that. It's helped me in mine. It's probably one of the most powerful energies in the world, is to have gratitude, because it connects us to more of what we want and everything that we have, and that allows us to really experience life on a deep level. And Kate, I so appreciate all the insights and knowledge that you've shared here today, and really just opening up and expanding the minds of people worldwide, not only through this episode, but through your daily inspiration and commitment on social media as well. It's really, really cool to see and hear. And I'm glad that I got to experience it firsthand and share it with the listeners.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope it's if it helps one person, then our mission has been accomplished. So.
Yes, I 100% agree. I don't think I could agree more. And please, everybody, head over to Kate's Instagram, Miss Kate Abate. Let her know what you thought of this episode. I think she'd love that. I know I'd love to see that as well. And then you could also visit her website. Kate, do you want to share what that is and just kind of where they can find you or connect with you further?
Yeah, so I'm on Steemit, which is a blockchain-based social media. If you don't know what blockchain is, it's totally okay, but it is the new internet, so go check that out. But it's actually, the link on my bio is the link to my blog, and it's steemit.com/@Miss Kate Abate.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, go connect with her there. All of that information will be in the description below and on the show notes page. So if you want to make sure to do that and read all the notes and get all the key information from this episode, you can visit www.celestial.fit/podcast. And make sure, like I said, let us know what you thought. What were some of your main takeaways, so we know that we have accomplished our mission of making an impact in your life. So with that being said, I hope that you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world, while you're listening to this podcast. Have an awesome day and make it great.